Hi, this is Lauren, and I'm really honored to be participating in the Eating Disorders Awareness Hop today with Candoodle Creations. I know there's a lot of amazing people on this hop, so we are going to jump right into making this card. I'm going to start with a piece of my mixed media paper as I'm going to be doing some distressing. I'm pulling out all of my purple distress oxides. Purple is the color for eating disorder awareness, and that's the color and theme of all of our cards on this hop today. So I have this pack of sequins called Jellyfish. It's by Sparklets, and I'm using that as a guide to pick which colors I want to use. I settle on milled lavender, which I'm going to use to color this whole piece of paper. I started using my smaller brush, but brought out my larger one as I need to cover a large amount of space. Once I have my background completely covered, I'm going to use this stencil by Kindred Stamps. It's called the Long Hair Stencil, and I'm going to use two other purples to layer on top of this milled lavender. I chose Seedless Preserves and Dusty Concord. I sprayed my stencil with some pixie spray, and I'm going to use some mint tape just for some extra security to make sure the stencil doesn't move. I want to have nice clean lines and make sure that milled lavender shows through in between these two darker purples. So I'm going on a diagonal and starting with Seedless Preserves, and then using Dusty Concord on the other side of my diagonal, and then blending the two together. I wanted to create kind of a seamless line in between the two. I guess it wouldn't be a line if it's seamless, a seamless transition between the two colors. And once I'm happy with how it looks, I'm going to peel off my stencil, and I really like how this color looks together with this really fun stencil. I use my distress sprayer to activate some of the oxide, and I'm going to place it inside of my splatter box and use some Fun Stamper's Journey Silk in Cosmic Grape to add some splatter to my background. I'm going to set my paper to dry and clean up my workstation and get rid of some of this mess. And now we're going to work on a stamped image. I'm using this really cute character from a Kindred stamp set called Showstopper. I really like the sentiments of this set. I think it goes really well with the theme of this hop, and I love this character for her costume. I'm stamping her with some jet black ink from Lawn Fawn. This is an alcohol marker friendly ink, and I'm using my heat gun to set the ink. I find that this really helps when I'm using my lighter colors while coloring. Because of that colorless blender, it sometimes picks up the ink, and this really helps a lot with that problem. I pulled out some of my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, and I'm not going to show all my coloring for this video. I didn't want to have my video be too long, so I'm just going to skip through and you can see the different colors I use, but I have everything listed down in my description below. Candace from Candoodle Creations, she is a wonderful crafty friend of mine. I just love her interactive cards, and everything that she uses is just so darn cute. You definitely need to check her out if you aren't already a follower. And I was really honored to be asked to be part of this hop. I think that there definitely is not enough awareness for eating disorders. We always associate it with, really skinny people who have body dysmorphia, and there's just so much more to it than that. If you think you struggle with this, Candace has given lots of contact information for different support groups down below in my description. And also, I just wanted to talk about an interesting myth about eating disorders, that they are not only just about food. Although the word eating is in the name, eating disorders are often about more than food and can often involve emotional distress, anxiety, perfectionism, and difficulty with impulse control. So if you think you have a problem or know someone who might have a problem and possibly have an eating disorder, please use the links below. Now that I'm done coloring my image, I am using a small retractable knife, and I am cutting out any of the white space underneath my character's arms and above her arms as well, and then fussy cutting her out, leaving a small white border. That way there is just a little white border around all of the images, because I am going to be layering her over some acetate, and I wanted it to have openings and a consistent white border around the whole image. Now that my background is dry, I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle, so I used some sparkle silk on my background. And now I'm getting out my dies. I'm using my largest of the wonky stitch rectangles and a more medium size of the pierce and stitch circles die sets, both from Whimsy. And I am figuring out how I'm going to cut out my background and use cement tape to help keep those dies in place together. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine and get out all of my pieces to assemble my card. I have my embellishment pack. I've cut a card base out of some purple cardstock. I'm getting some acetate and foam out because I'm making a shaker card. I know my January videos are done, but I can't stop making shaker cards. I just love them. They're probably now my new favorite. Before it was pull tabs, but now I think it's shakers. I'm adding some strong sticky tape to a piece of acetate, and I'm going to layer this behind my background piece. I make sure there is a nice seal, and I'm going to apply the same tape on one of my foam pieces here. I used my same rectangle and circle dies to cut this out and then trimmed down the rectangle a bit so it wouldn't show past the edge of my background, which I guess is now my foreground for the background. I'm going to peel off all of that release paper off the tape and apply that directly behind my background piece, making sure my circles line up. That's probably the most important part. You can always trim the foam if it sticks out the side of the card, but you really want that circle to not peek through the acetate and line up perfectly. I'm using some wet glue and I'm going to apply the second piece of foam. This foam does get a little squished when running through my die cut machine, so I double up to make sure there's lots of space for my embellishments to move around. I poured some of this Sparklets pack into my acetate shaker window here, and there's a lot of one like bauble type embellishments in here. So there's a flat side and a curved side. So I am flipping over all of those pieces to make sure that the flat side will be against the back of the paper, and that way the viewer of the shaker card can see the pretty baubles inside of the shaker. Now I laid my acetate paper on top just to make sure that all of the pieces would move. I was a little worried that they were going to be thicker than the foam, so that was me just doing a little sanity check. Now that I'm happy with it, I'm cutting down a second piece of acetate and I'm applying my embossing tool on the back of it to remove any static. I'm going to use that same double-sided sticky tape and apply it to my acetate, pull up the release paper, and close up that shaker. I'm going to make sure my shaker looks good before I do anything further, and I'm really happy everything is moving well. So I'm going to glue this down to my card base. Well, I was going to. I totally forgot that I wanted to glue my circle behind the shaker. So we're going to do our best attempt at this. I cut a piece of scrap paper with that same rectangle and circle, and I figured out kind of where the design matches up, and I just laid it down to the best of my ability. And I put some more glue on that shaker piece and glue it on top so the circle shines through the shaker. And I don't think I did that bad of a job. It doesn't line up perfectly, but it's still seamless enough to be not too noticeable. I put glue on the back of my stamped image here and glued her to the center of my shaker. And I'm going to be super daring with my sentiment and stamp who you're meant to be in some VersaFine black ink. And it's stamped well, I think because I have that foam under there. And now I'm going to add a few extra embellishments around my shaker. I'm picking out some of my favorite embellishments from that pack and placing them in various spots around my shaker circle. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to use my jewel picker and some wet glue and lift up each of those little embellishments and glue them down. Again, I'm so honored to be a part of this hop and to raise awareness for eating disorders. I'm a big supporter and fan of Candace, and I'm really excited to be a part of this for her and with her. I love my card and this message behind it to support eating disorder awareness. Please find more information down in my description as well as the next person on the hop. If you get lost, you can always come back to my channel or Candace's channel. Thank you for watching and have a great day.